What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets, and break down some big news that's coming out involving the way the market's moving, not to mention some new developments on the charts. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. Soft runs very soon, in just about 7 days from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, we were talking about some upside potential for Tesla to try to break past 244. And I said that if that breaks, we're looking for that gap fill at 246. And once that broke, we were talking about 250 as our targets. That's exactly where Tesla ended up going to. So we called all these levels very, very nicely. However, the question is what's going to happen from here? And the answer is looking at some metrics, I do see a risk of the market maybe dipping a bit going into tomorrow because of some news, not to mention what the charts are showing us. So I want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up about that and how this could affect Tesla stock as well. But first, let's talk about what's happening with the markets when it comes to economic news and the other stuff. Then I'll talk about the charts a little bit later. So tomorrow, as a reminder, is going to be Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. Please remember that before the market opens, we have the house price index report, which is very minor, might not cause anything too crazy. Then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have some data coming out. We have the consumer confidence report coming out, which is very minor. And then we have more significant data, which is going to be the Richmond Fed manufacturing shipments, and services prices all coming out. So this is going to be very, very important. So whatever we get from all of this is going to cause a very, very big amount of volatility. So at 10 a.m., look for high volatility. And I think that this may cause an interesting move because we're going to get more insights about how these sectors are looking. Then on top of that, we have some bill auctions and note auctions. It's all very minor, nothing else too crazy. Now, when it comes to the fear and greed index, right now, things are greedy as we saw a lot of buyers buy up the market and we're still holding up near these all-time highs. But resistance is very tough as we're seeing momentum at extreme greed. So yes, we are technically at a high level. We're still well above our 125 daily moving average. But the issue is we're at some tough resistance near the all-time high, and the last time SPY hit that range, we did reject. So be very careful as we hit these highs at the S&P 500. For the put and call option ratio, I just want to say that right now we're neutral, kind of stuck in the middle, not too bullish, not too bearish. We're still stuck there. Volatility is also quite neutral, stuck in the middle. We're not really seeing too much of a shift, so we'll give that some time. For other factors out there, I just want to mention that for Tuesday, we have AutoZone announcing earnings. For Wednesday, we have Micron and a few others. And then for Thursday, we have Costco. Costco is going to be a big one, so get ready for that. For other factors out there, I just want to mention that we do have some bad news. Right now, there's a lot of tensions in the Middle East. It's very sad to hear about this. And as you know, this has been going on for centuries, if not thousands of years. So I'm not trying to pick any sides. I just want to say that the situation is tense and the US is getting involved. So we will see how this affects the markets. Will the market get some kind of reaction to this? It's very sad to see news like this, but the best thing I could really do is hope for the best. For those who believe in prayer, keep your prayers out there for the people who are being impacted, and we will see what happens. That's all I could really say. There's not much in my control when it comes to what this will lead to, but all I could really say is that the market is not really reacting so much so far. It is possible we get some kind of reaction tomorrow. And once again, I just wish the best for everyone that's involved. I hope that as few innocent lives get lost as possible. And it's very, very tough to read things like that, right? When you start thinking about it, it's just very, very tough. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, I just want to say that Tesla outperformed the market because we got some bullish news. We got some bullish sales forecasts for their Q3 deliveries report, which comes out next week. October 2nd is going to be the big date, and I can't wait to see how that goes. So just know that we saw this nice little jump. There's also been a lot of positive remarks about the Robotaxi event. Many Wall Street analysts are forecasting sales to rise 6% from last year to about 460,000 EVs sold. That's what's coming out for Q3 as the expectation. However, Barclays analyst Daniel Levi has come out and he's saying that investors should be expecting Tesla to jump higher than the consensus estimate at about 470,000 EVs instead, for an 8% jump, which is higher than expected. So that's what he's saying. Others out there are saying that Tesla will easily top 440,000. So we're seeing a lot of positive remarks, a lot of positive anticipations for Tesla's deliveries, which comes out very, very soon. This is going to be very big, so I can't wait to see what Tesla announces next week. Very, very big news. Cantor Fitzgerald is neutral on Tesla, whereas Canaccord Genuity is still giving Tesla a buy rating. The price-price ratio is going up as Tesla's building some strength. And Tuesdays have a tendency of being green about 51% of the time. We also tend to see more seasonality around We tend to see more volatility at 9 a.m. and also at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Besides that, I'm not really seeing anything else that's too crazy. I also want to mention that volume is only at about 86 million, so it's not that great volume. And Tesla's approaching some tough resistance, so we'll see what happens. So, with that being said, let's talk about the chart. What do I think is going to happen from here? It's very simple, guys. Okay, we have this 250 area as our resistance, but one thing worth mentioning is that the last time we hit the 250 area, we had a tough chop zone. So, look right here, we're seeing a lot of choppy price action between 250 and 255. So we will see what happens. Will we get this rejection off 255 or not? Will we end up re-entering the chop zone? I also want to mention that if we were to hypothetically lose support around this, if we reject off 250, we end up losing like this 247.5 area. This is where this wick happens to be. We're looking for support around this 244 area. That's going to be our main support. So I'll be watching to see which way this ends up going. So in my opinion, however, when I'm looking at SPY, the QQQ, and others, I'm seeing some signals that show that tech may slow down a little bit. And, the market is run by these algorithms. Notice how the market was green today, and so was Tesla. The market was red on Friday, and we saw Tesla dip a little bit as well. So it's kind of like following the market. So I think what's going to happen is if the market does get a small dip, this might slow Tesla down a bit as this 250 area is in new territory. So going into tomorrow, Tesla has a tendency of kind of rejecting between 250 and 255. We could push a little bit higher, get close to 252, and then reject. And I think we might be looking for a little bit of a pullback. We might actually retest 246 for that gap support, if not 244, which is where the breakout happened to be. So look for a little pump and a dump, maybe a little bit of a dip on Tesla as the most likely case if we don't hold above 250. So that's going to be a very, very key trigger level. So I think we might go a little higher than start dipping. We may not be able to hold above 250 for too long unless we get a really good catalyst. And I think the odds will favor us kind of coming back down into that 246 to 244 area, back into the mid 240s. So what else do I see from the markets? I just want to mention that for SPY, we're doing a good job at holding up, but just notice that we had this yellow trend line as our support, and now we're not holding that as well. So that's what happened as of recent. I released a video where I talked about how there were some signals that showed the market could be slowing down. Why? Because number one, we're not holding this yellow trend line as well as we should be. Number two, the last time we hit 570 to 572 we rejected. Even today we hit 570 and kind of failed to hold above that. And the third thing is the fact that momentum is showing that we are favoring bears a little bit more. We're starting to slow down. So that is giving me the idea that this may start to dip a little bit, but we need to watch for confirmation just to be safe. So if SPY bounces and breaks 570, we turn bullish. We could be pushing for higher levels if we could hold above 570. If we lose 568, I'm expecting a bigger dip back down to 565, if not 563. Those are going to be some very, very key levels for SPY. So make sure you watch these levels carefully. Going into tomorrow, I think we're going to be testing 568 because of some tensions around the world. That could be one factor, not to mention technicals. But we already were showing this weakness like before this news became as prevalent. So I think it has to do with both technicals and also the news. So we could be dipping back down to about 568, and then we will see what we end up doing from here. If that fails us, we're coming all the way down to 565. That looks very, very favorable. Now, when it comes to ES, I'm seeing the same thing basically. So ES has resistance at 5780, not to mention 5800, and we have the support around 5750. If we lose that, we're looking for a move all the way down towards the lower 5700s. I think that's going to be very, very favorable. And if we end up losing 5700, we're looking for 5680. If that fills us, we have this big gap to fill all the way down here towards 5635. So, in my opinion, I think what's going to likely happen is this. We could be establishing a high up here, and this could be our lower high for a little bit of a dip that's coming. I think we're going to be retesting 57.53 tomorrow, the 20 EMA, this green support, and we might actually lose this. We might actually see a little bit of a dip from there. So I find that's to be the most likely case. For Nvda, I'm seeing something very similar as we're making lower highs and lower lows. And we might be retesting these supports. We need to break 118 to turn back up. Otherwise, we're at risk of tipping towards the lower 115s to 114 area all the way down here to fill the gap. So I think we might be dipping back down to fill this gap towards 114. And we'll see if we bounce off this or not. So look for a little bit more downside. We had this high up here. We came down. We made a lower high. So we could be dipping back down to about 114.5. Excuse me. For Bitcoin, not looking too good. So it is trying to hold this support at 63,140. That's going to be our 20 EMA. If we lose that, I think this dips down to about 62,500. And if we end up holding above this, we're looking for basically 63,600. But I think what's going to happen is Bitcoin might be dipping below 63,000 all the way down to the 62,500 area. I say that because we have bearish momentum building, we have a bearish divergence, and we're just barely holding this 20 EMA. So I think we might be dipping a little bit lower. For other factors out there, when it comes to NQ, I'm seeing something very similar. Same setup as SPY almost to a T. I anticipate we're going to be dipping back down to the 20 EMA towards 19,981. If that fails us, we're looking for 19,800. If we hold this, we could try to rebound for 20,200. My gut tells me that 19,980 is likely coming, and we might be dipping to 19,800 below that. So that's most likely what's going to happen to NQ. I find that to be very, very favorable. And if this fails us, we're going to be looking for a bigger dip. Now, if we end up dipping all the way down below 19,800, I think we go down to about 19,600, followed by this big gap over here to fill around 19,400. So there's a risk of us dipping lower if we lose 19,981. And then I think that there's a risk of us retesting 19,800. That's what NQ is suggesting. For the QQQ is the same setup. So basically, QQQ has some tough resistance at this 485 area. It's going to be very, very tough. If we break this, we're looking for a breakout. If not, if we don't break 485, it could be dipping. We have kind of like a high here that was established, a dip right there. The lower high could be established after that. So we could be dipping closer to about 480. If that fails us, we'll be dipping all the way down to where this gap is, down to about 475. So we have kind of like a double top. We have a lower high that's being established compared to this high. I think there's a risk of us dipping all the way down to 480, which if that fails us, we come down to fill that gap towards 475. So I find that to be a little bit more probable. For the QQQ and for the Nasdaq and tech as a whole, I'm starting to see some risks of downside. If you look at Apple, we have like a head and shoulders like structure. I think we easily go down to 225 tomorrow. If that fails us, we're looking for 223.8, 223.5, excuse me. And then this gap fill down to the 222s. I think that's the most likely case for Apple as we have a head and shoulders and the structure looks more bearish. We need to reclaim 228s to turn back up, but there is a risk of this dipping. And I'm going to go over more tech stocks. So you're going to see how there's a lot of them that have very similar setups for bearish outcomes. So that's what's going to determine why the QQQ may be dipping. And then with the QQQ and SPY potentially dipping a little bit, with the whole market, the Nasdaq, the S&P 500 slowing down, this might be used as a catalyst to also slow Tesla down as well. So that's the way the market's moving. We have this giant algorithm that's kind of dictating everything, and Tesla may follow the everything fall. So with that being said, Tesla might also slow down, unfortunately. We're going to have some tough resistance in the low 250s. We could retest that for a little bit more upside, but then there could be a little slowdown coming because of the broader markets. Okay, so now let's talk about the rest of these. How about Palantir? Palantir is doing a good job at holding up. We're looking at the 38.5 areas of potential target. We could go a little bit higher, but then I think this might end up retesting the breakout in the 37.25 area. So it might kind of pop and then drop back down. That is the most likely case in my opinion. For Supermicro, we have a bearish divergence like structure. We have this resistance to watch for at this 475 area, and we have this very, very key support at this 450 area. So what I'm thinking is that we might be dipping back down towards 450. We might be retesting these EMAs. So look for a little bit of a dip towards 456 to 450. Then we could try to bounce off that again as we're still holding up nicely. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a liquidity grab right here and we kind of come down to this imbalance, taking us down to at least 456. For Rivian, we look more bearish. We have resistance all the way up towards the 12.2 area. Our support to watch was going to be at this 11. I think we still look kind of weak here. We might be retesting the low at this 11.7 area, and I don't think we're ready to bounce yet. We still look kind of lackluster in the after hours, so look for more potential downside for now. SoFi looks more bearish because we lost $8, so now we're going to likely be dipping down to 7.8. And we have to see if that holds. If it does not hold, we're going to be dipping even lower, all the way down to 7.63. Now, if we do reclaim 8, we could try to get back up to 8.2, but that's not looking very likely. I think the odds favor 7.81 and eventually all the way down to about 7.64. For the IWM, we also look a little bit more bearish. So if we end up losing 220.6, I think that there's a good chance that we dip even lower all the way down towards 219, followed by the 217.8 area. This is going to be our 50 EMA. To be bullish, you want to break past 222, but just know there is a concern I have, and that is the fact that the IWM is just not holding its 20 EMA very nicely. It's barely at support. It's not doing a good job at really holding this and trying to bounce. It's barely holding this to a T, so this could cause us to start dipping, so you want to be very, very careful. For AMD, we're just trading sideways right here. it is possible it tries to go a little bit higher to grab liquidity right here at this resistance near 157, but then there could be a rejection back down for 154. That's going to be our 20 EMA. We also happen to have this gap to fill. So if we lose 154, I think we might be coming down to gap support at 151. So I think that this is kind of like forming a wall right here. So wall right here is very, very tough to break. And AMD could be dipping down to 154. For ARM, we have the same setup. It's very, very simple. Check this out, guys. So we like to pump and dump. We pumped and dumped, pumped and dumped, pumped and dumped. Might be coming back down to 140 pretty easily. And this could drag us all the way down to 137. So I think this might be dipping back down to at least a 20 MA, 139, and eventually 137. That's the most likely case. For Coinbase, we look a little bit more bearish. We're looking for basically 167. If that fails us, we're looking for a bigger dip for 165. Still looks more bearish to me. But we'll see if we bounce off 167 or not. That's going to be very pivotal. So for Amazon, we're doing a decent job at holding up, but the issue I see is the fact that we're hitting this tough resistance up here around this 195 area. So 195 could be tested. If we reject there, we could be dipping back down for essentially this imbalance, taking us down to 191. That's also where the breakout happened to be. So look for 195. We could get very close to this before we come back down to 191. And if we fail there, we're going back down to 188 all over again, which is where we had this wick. So that's the previous resistance becoming support, 188. That's coming next if we lose 191, guys. So Amazon might go a little bit higher. It's still holding up well. 195 could be tested, and then it could be dipping back down. Meta is looking a little bit weak now. This is another big tech one that's weakening. So notice that we were pumping very nicely only to dump back down. This imbalance is going to likely fill. We have this gap to fill at 561. So we need to try to get back above at least 568 to turn back up. If not, we're at risk of coming down to about 561, if not 560. So look for a little bit of a dip to the lower 560s and we'll see how things go. For Microsoft, we look a little bit more bearish. So the issue with Microsoft is the 4-hour has a 20 EMA and we are below it. So it's not a very, very good sign. The problem with Microsoft is we're not holding our key support at 434. Because we've lost that, there's a risk of us going all the way down for 430, if not 427.86. So I think we're going to be dipping back down to those levels. And I see a risk of more downside for 430 or below. For Google, we look a little bit more bearish. We're continuing to fall. So the problem with Google was we had a bearish divergence. Volume was slowing down. And then check this out. It was pushing. It was trying to break this resistance. It was doing a good job. And then it got a big rejection after that. And we came below our 200 EMA. So because we lost the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, Google looks like it might be dipping for 162.5. If that fails us, we're dipping back down to about 160. We also have this gap to fill. So there's a lot of confluences that suggest it's coming down to at least 162, if not 160. It looks more bearish to me. For others out there, we have DJT looking more bearish, continuing to downtrend right now. It's very, very weak. I was calling out the 12s yesterday. I think it could be dipping all the way down to like 11.5 or below. So I think this has more potential downside coming. Still looks very, very weak. The VIX is very interesting. So the VIX might come down to fill this gap, guys. But before that happens, we might see a little bounce again. It might rebound a bit at this support. Notice how it's trying to hold the support. It has kind of like a double bottom here. So the VIX could do something like this where we still have this gap, right? But instead of going straight down to fill the gap, it gets a little bounce first. What if it does something like this where it retests its resistance up here? It's a little bit of a rebound into like the 17 area as the market dips a bit. And then we come down to fill this gap as the market bounces. So maybe what's happening is the market gets a small dip. Okay, the VIX rebounces, and then the VIX gets a big rug pull because the market gets a big pump again. So this could just be a very temporary dump, a very temporary dip for the market. It's not a massive dump, not a crash. Just a small little dip could be coming. Market may drop like 1 to 2 points before we see another attempt to rebound. For the 10-year treasury yield, we're just kind of shopping right here. We're looking for 3.71 as our support, and then for 3.76 is resistance. So we're still kind of stuck, not doing much. But another confluence of the market dipping is the dollar. The dollar has a nice structure here. Notice how it's trying to hold up. We need to try to hold above 101. If we break that, we're looking for a big push for 101.3. There is potential in this, and I think that this could try to form a nice accumulation. So this has potential to try to hold up as we have a bullish divergence forming on the dollar like this. So the dollar has this divergence, and this could lead to a little bit of a bounce above 101. So if we break that, we're looking for 101.67, and this could try to rebound with the inverse head and shoulders. In my opinion, there's a good chance that this tries to push. 101 could try to break on the dollar. This could try to go higher, so we'll see how things end up going. In my opinion, the dollar is kind of like a signal that's showing us the market may dip a bit. And if you look at SPY right now, we're currently just barely at 569, kind of losing support. So that makes me think that with the market potentially dipping, this might slow Tesla down a bit as we're hitting a tough liquidity zone close to this 250 area. So look for a little bit more upside. It could go a little higher before it starts to dip back down. And there's going to be a risk of us coming back down for a little bit of a pullback for Tesla, just temporarily. I'm not saying it's going to last forever, just a temporary dip as the market may fall a little bit. And then we could still bounce once we get very, very close to the end of the week, if not by next week with the whole event coming out with Tesla's deliveries. All right. So I'm not saying this is going to be a crash, just a temporary dip, which is completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. And we'll see how things go. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys tomorrow before the market opens. Until then, have a great day, night, or evening, and peace out.